In early 2020, one of the most respected names in gaming released a remake that should have been a celebration. Instead, it became a warning. For decades, Blizzard Entertainment had built a reputation. Few companies could match. They were not just a studio, they were a standard. When Blizzard announced a remastered version of Warcraft III, Reforged, fans did not just expect a visual upgrade, they expected magic. After all, the original Warcraft III, Reign of Chaos, was not just another real-time strategy game. Released in 2002, it helped define an ERA. It sold millions of copies, shaped competitive esports, and gave birth to an entire genre through its custom map scene. One of those maps, Defense of the Ancients, would later inspire the entire MOBA industry. This was sacred ground. So when Reforged launched in January 2020, expectations were sky high. Blizzard had promised completely reworked cutscenes, modernized graphics, updated matchmaking, and a respectful restoration of a classic. Instead, within hours of release, the internet exploded. Review scores plummeted. The game became one of the lowest-rated titles in user review history. Refund requests flooded customer service. Forums filled with anger. But this story is not just about a bad remaster. It is about how one product became a symbol of broken promises, corporate drift, and the slow erosion of trust between a legendary studio and its most loyal fans. And here is where it gets interesting. The damage went far beyond Warcraft. To understand the backlash, we need to understand the pedestal. In the late 1990s and the early 2000s, Blizzard was operating at a different level. StarCraft redefined competitive real-time strategy gaming. Diablo II became a genre classic. Then came Warcraft III, blending strategy with role-playing elements, cinematic storytelling, and iconic heroes like Arthas. Blizzard had a reputation for delaying games until they were perfect. Their unofficial motto was simple: it will ship when it is ready. That philosophy built immense goodwill. Fans believed that if Blizzard announced something, it would be polished. Even bold changes were forgiven, because the end result was usually exceptional. By the time Reforged was announced at BlizzCon 2018, nostalgia was powerful. The trailer showcased dramatically improved character models and cutscenes that looked almost like a modern role-playing game. Blizzard described it as a full reimagining. The crowd cheered. Pre-orders opened immediately. Many fans purchased without hesitation. Trust was the currency, and Blizzard had built a fortune of it over 2 decades. On paper, Warcraft III Reforged had everything going for it. The real-time strategy genre was not as dominant as it once was, but nostalgia had become a powerful economic force. Remakes were succeeding across the industry. Players were eager to revisit the worlds that shaped their childhood. Reforged was positioned not just as a remaster, but as a bridge between generations. It would introduce new players to Azeroth's early history while satisfying veterans. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Development reportedly shifted direction multiple times. The ambitious reworked cutscenes shown in 2018 were scaled back. Features were cut, and expectations were quietly lowered. Now you might be thinking, scaling back features happens all the time in game development. And that is true, but Blizzard had marketed Reforged on the promise of those enhancements. When the final product launched without many of them, fans felt misled. Worse, the release did not just fail to improve the original experience. In some ways, it made it worse. Here is the twist that reframed everything. Warcraft III. Reforged did not exist as a separate product. It replaced the original client. Players who owned the classic 2002 version were forced to download the new launcher. Even if they preferred the old graphics, they were now tied to Reforged's infrastructure. Features that had worked for years were suddenly missing. Custom campaigns were gone at launch. Competitive ladders were absent. Performance issues plagued matches. Visual bugs and audio glitches disrupted gameplay. The Metacritic user score dropped to near historic lows, hovering around 0.5 out of 10 at one point. Then the policy change arrived. Blizzard updated its terms regarding custom maps. Under the new rules, any custom game created within Warcraft III would be owned by Blizzard. This was widely interpreted as a move to prevent another Defense of the Ancients scenario, where a community creation could evolve into a billion-dollar genre outside Blizzard's control. But to the community, it felt like a betrayal. Warcraft III's custom map ecosystem had been built by players. It was one of the reasons the game endured for nearly 2 decades. Now, creators felt that their creativity was being claimed preemptively. But wait, there is more to this story. The backlash was not happening in isolation. It came at a time when Blizzard was already under scrutiny. In 2019, controversy erupted over Blizzard's handling of a professional Hearthstone player who expressed support for Hong Kong protests. Critics accused the company of prioritizing business interests in China over free expression. That incident had already shaken public perception. Reforged poured gasoline on that fire. What might once have been dismissed as a disappointing remake was now interpreted as evidence of something bigger, a company drifting away from its core values. The fallout was swift and visible. Blizzard offered refunds even beyond standard policies. This was unusual. It signaled that the company recognized the scale of dissatisfaction. Content creators published critical videos that garnered millions of views. Longtime fans posted side-by-side comparisons showing downgraded cutscenes compared to the 2018 demo. Trust eroded rapidly. And in the business world, trust is not just emotional. It has tangible consequences. Pre-order culture relies heavily on brand credibility. When that credibility cracks, future launches suffer. Reforged became a meme, often cited as an example of how not to handle a remaster. It joined a growing narrative that Blizzard was no longer the perfectionist studio of old, but a corporation chasing quarterly results. Even internal reports suggested morale challenges within the company. Around this period, Blizzard was experiencing restructuring, leadership changes, and increased integration with its parent company, Activision Blizzard. To fans, the distinction between Blizzard and its parent blurred. The once independent creative powerhouse now seemed like another division in a massive conglomerate. In the years that followed, patches gradually restored missing features. Ranked play was eventually implemented. Improvements rolled out slowly. But reputational damage does not patch as easily as software. Reforged became shorthand for disappointment. It was frequently referenced in discussions about corporate mismanagement in gaming. Even unrelated Blizzard announcements were met with skepticism. And then, in 2022, another seismic shift occurred. Microsoft announced plans to acquire Activision Blizzard in a deal valued at nearly $69 billion. For some fans, this represented hope. A new corporate parent might allow Blizzard to rediscover its identity. For others, it underscored how far the company had moved from its scrappy, independent roots. The Warcraft III debacle was not the sole cause of Blizzard's reputation decline, but it became a symbol, a focal point. It showed that even legendary brands can stumble. When expectations are built on decades of excellence, the fall feels steeper. So what does Warcraft III Reforged ultimately represent? It represents the fragility of trust. Blizzard did not lose its reputation overnight. It was not a single bug or a missing feature that caused the outrage. It was the gap between promise and delivery, the difference between what fans were shown and what they received. For years, Blizzard operated with an almost mythic aura. They delayed games, they polished endlessly. They surprised audiences with quality. Reforged shattered that illusion. But here is the deeper lesson. In the modern gaming industry, nostalgia is powerful, but it is also dangerous. When companies revisit beloved classics, they are not just selling software, they are handling memories. Nostalgia is a fragile thing. Warcraft III was more than a product. It was part of players' childhoods. It was late-night LAN parties, early esports tournaments, the birthplace of new genres. When Reforged stumbled, it felt personal. And once emotional trust is broken, rebuilding it requires more than patches and updates. It requires consistency over time. Blizzard is still a major player. Its franchises remain influential. But the unquestioned loyalty it once enjoyed has changed into cautious optimism. Warcraft III. Reforged did not destroy Blizzard, but it forced the industry and its fans to confront a reality. Even giants can lose their way. And in business, reputation is not built by one masterpiece. It is built by patterns. Reforged became part of a new pattern, one that challenged the legacy of a studio once considered untouchable. The question now is not whether Blizzard can make great games again. The question is whether it can restore the trust that made those games legendary in the first place.